I'm standing in my mansion's marble foyer watching through security cameras as my sister Cassandra approaches the front gate with suitcases after 13 years of silence. The doorbell rings. My hands shake as memories flood back the family dinner where everything shattered, the accusations, the slammed doors, the complete rejection. I remember building my organic skincare empire from a tiny studio apartment, working 18-hour days just to survive the pain. Now Cassandra stands outside the success she helped destroy, acting like she belongs here. After what she did to me, how dare she? The memory hits me like a freight train as I stare at that security monitor. 13 years ago, I was 28 years old sitting around our family's oak dining table in Denver for what I thought would be another normal Thanksgiving. Mom had spent 3 days preparing her famous herb-crusted turkey, and the house smelled like cinnamon and sage. Dad carved while cracking his usual dad jokes about wishbones and family traditions. Timothy, my younger brother, was showing off pictures from his recent college graduation. Everything felt perfect, warm, safe. Our family had always been tight-knit. We were Irish-American through and through, with Sunday dinners at Mom and Dad's house being sacred family time. Frank, my father, worked construction for 37 years and taught us the value of honest work. Margaret, my mother, was a school nurse who believed in taking care of everyone. We 3 kids had our usual sibling dynamics, but underneath it all was genuine love and loyalty, or so I believed. Cassandra, 2 years older than me, had always been what Mom called the golden child. Student body president in high school, full scholarship to law school, perfectly organized life, with color-coded calendars and 5-year plans. I admired her drive even when her perfectionism made me feel inadequate. Timothy was our baby the charmer who could talk his way out of any trouble with his easy smile and quick wit. The conversation that night started innocently enough. Grandma Rose had passed away 6 months earlier at 93, and we were finally settling her estate. She'd been the heart of our family, the one who taught me to make her famous lavender cookies, and shared stories about immigrating from Ireland with nothing but hope and determination. Her little house in Lakewood had been sold, and we were dividing her few precious belongings. Most of Grandma's jewelry was costume pieces with sentimental value, but there was one exception: her emerald ring. It was a stunning piece from the 1920s, worth about $25,000, with a brilliant cut emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. But its real value was emotional. Grandma had worn it every day for 70 years, and she'd specifically requested in her will that it go to me. I remember feeling overwhelmed by the honor. Grandma had always said I reminded her of her younger self, stubborn and creative, with big dreams that scared practical people. She'd encouraged my interest in natural remedies and homemade beauty treatments, sharing her handwritten journal full of family recipes passed down through generations. That Thanksgiving night, Dad pulled out the small velvet box from Grandma's jewelry collection. I could see the emerald gleaming under the dining room chandelier, and my heart swelled with gratitude. But when Dad opened the box, it was empty. The silence around that table was deafening. Mom gasped and covered her mouth. Timothy leaned forward confused. Cassandra frowned and suggested we search the house thoroughly. Maybe it had fallen out somewhere. For 2 hours, our entire family tore through Grandma's belongings, checking every box, every pocket, every possible hiding place. I felt sick to my stomach, not because of the ring's monetary value, but because it represented Grandma's love for me. Losing it felt like losing a piece of her all over again. Cassandra suggested we search our own homes just in case someone had accidentally taken it. I agreed immediately, desperate to find it. I had nothing to hide. We all drove to our respective places with family members as witnesses. I lived in a small apartment near downtown Denver at the time, working as a marketing coordinator for a nonprofit environmental organization. My place was modest but clean, and I welcomed everyone inside. We searched methodically: kitchen drawers, bathroom cabinets, bedroom closets. Then Cassandra called out from my childhood bedroom, which I'd recreated in my apartment, with the same white furniture and pink bedspread from our family home. She was holding up the velvet box, her face a mixture of shock and disappointment. "I found it," she said quietly, her voice heavy with what sounded like reluctant duty. "It was hidden behind your jewelry box." The room erupted. Dad's face turned red with anger I'd never seen before. Mom started crying. Timothy just stared at me like I'd become a stranger. "Matilda, how could you?" Mom's voice broke my heart. "Stealing from your own grandmother's estate?" I couldn't breathe. "I didn't take it. I would never—" "Then how did it get there?" Cassandra asked her lawyer's training evident in her cross-examination tone. "It was deliberately hidden, Matilda, behind your jewelry box where no one would accidentally find it." I looked around at my family's faces. These people had known me my entire life. They'd seen me rescue injured birds, volunteer at homeless shelters, give my last $20 to help a struggling friend. They knew my character, but in that moment their expressions showed nothing but disappointment and betrayal. "Maybe someone put it there," I said weakly, even though the suggestion sounded desperate even to my own ears. "Huga," Dad demanded. "We were all together when we searched. Are you saying one of us planted evidence?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. I realized how my suggestion sounded like I was accusing my own family members of framing me, but I knew with absolute certainty that I hadn't taken that ring. Cassandra sat down heavily on my bed, her face the picture of reluctant justice. "Matilda, I think you need help. Professional help. Taking something that valuable from family shows serious problems with judgment and impulse control." Mom nodded through her tears. "We'll support you through counseling, sweetheart, but you have to admit what you did and take responsibility." "I can't admit to something I didn't do," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. That was the wrong answer. Dad stood up, his construction worker's hands clenched into fists. "Then you need to leave. If you can't be honest with us, if you're going to keep lying to our faces, then you're not welcome in this family." "Frank," Mom protested weakly. "No, Margaret. I won't have a thief in my house, even if she's my daughter. If Matilda wants to choose lies over family, that's her decision." Timothy finally spoke up. "Matilda, just tell the truth. Whatever's going on, we can work through it together." But I couldn't confess to a crime I didn't commit. Even to save my family relationships, I couldn't build my future on a lie that would eat away at my soul. "I didn't take the ring," I said one final time. "I'm sorry you don't believe me." I walked out of that apartment and out of their lives. The last thing I saw was Cassandra's face, and for just a split second, her mask of sorrowful disappointment slipped. I caught a glimpse of something else, satisfaction. A tiny smile that she quickly suppressed, but I saw it. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding or a tragic accident. This was planned revenge, and I had no idea what I'd done to deserve it. I drove west from Denver with $800 in my checking account, a duffel bag of clothes, and Grandma Rose's handwritten recipe journal. The only thing I'd managed to grab from her belongings before everything fell apart. I had no plan, no destination, just a desperate need to put distance between myself and the wreckage of my family. Los Angeles seemed like the kind of place where people reinvented themselves, so that's where I headed. The drive took 14 hours and I cried for most of it. By the time I reached the city limits, my eyes were so swollen I could barely see the road. Finding housing with no job and minimal savings was a nightmare. I spent my first 2 weeks sleeping in my beat-up Honda Civic, parking in different 24-hour businesses each night to avoid police attention. I showered at a gym that offered $3 day passes and ate 99-cent burritos from gas stations. Eventually, I found a studio apartment in a rough neighborhood near Koreatown that I could share with 2 other women for $300 a month each. Petra was a struggling actress from Ohio who worked nights at a diner, and Joanne was a community college student studying to become a dental hygienist. Our apartment was basically one room with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom so small you had to close the door to use the toilet. I took every job I could find. Mornings at a coffee shop in West Hollywood where entitled customers screamed about their almond milk foam art. Afternoons walking dogs for wealthy people in Beverly Hills, who paid me $15 an hour to exercise their pampered poodles, weekends helping vendors set up at the Santa Monica Farmers Market for cash under the table. The work was exhausting, but it kept my mind busy. The worst times were late at night when I'd lie on my air mattress listening to Petra practice monologues and Joanne studying anatomy flashcards. That's when the loneliness would creep in, along with memories of family Sunday dinners and holiday traditions I'd never experience again. I missed my parents terribly. I missed Timothy's terrible puns and Mom's way of humming while she cooked. I even missed Cassandra's lectures about fiscal responsibility and career planning. Most of all, I missed feeling like I belonged somewhere, like I had people who would love me no matter what. But I refused to go back and confess to something I didn't do. My integrity was all I had left. During those first months in Los Angeles, I started experimenting with Grandma Rose's recipes to cope with my grief. Her journal contained dozens of natural beauty treatments passed down through 4 generations of Irish women: honey and oatmeal face masks, rosemary hair rinses, lavender salves for dry skin. I'd make small batches in our tiny kitchen after Petra and Joanne went to sleep, mixing ingredients by hand and storing the results in repurposed jam jars. The familiar sense of herbs and essential oils reminded me of Grandma's kitchen, and the process gave my hands something to do while my heart slowly healed. At first, I only made the treatments for myself. My skin had suffered from stress, poor diet, and sleeping in a car, but Grandma's recipes worked better than any expensive products I'd tried. The lavender face cream cleared up stress-related breakouts. The honey oat exfoliant made my skin glow, and the rosehip serum reduced dark circles from too many sleepless nights. Petra and Joanne started asking what I was using, so I made small containers for them to try. Then Joanne mentioned my homemade skincare to her study group, and suddenly I had 5 more customers willing to pay $20 each for custom face creams. That's how my business began, word of mouth, in a cramped studio apartment, selling hope and jam jars to other struggling young women trying to make it in Los Angeles. I started bringing products to the farmers market where I worked weekends, setting up a small card table next to the organic vegetable vendors. My display was humble hand-labeled jars arranged on vintage tablecloths I bought at thrift stores with handwritten information cards explaining the benefits of each ingredient. Most customers walked by without stopping, but occasionally someone would pause to smell the lavender or ask about the ingredients. Those early sales were precious $10 here, $15 there, enough to buy better packaging and more supplies. I reinvested every penny back into the business. Instead of buying new clothes or eating at restaurants, I haunted estate sales looking for vintage glass containers and researched suppliers for higher quality oils and botanical extracts. I spent countless hours at the public library reading business books and taking free online courses about marketing, accounting, and product development. The learning curve was steep. I had a degree in communications, not chemistry or business management. I made mistakes constantly, products that separated scents, that turned rancid labels that fell off in humid weather. Each failure taught me something new, but the constant problem solving was mentally exhausting. Holidays were the hardest times. My first Thanksgiving in Los Angeles, I worked a double shift at the coffee shop, while other employees spent time with their families. Christmas Eve found me alone in the apartment making a new batch of peppermint foot cream, while listening to other families celebrate in neighboring units. I tried not to think about what my family was doing during those holidays. Were they setting an empty place at the table out of habit? Did they talk about me at all? Or had they simply erased me from their lives like I'd never existed? During my 3rd year in Los Angeles, something happened that shattered what little hope I'd maintained about eventual reconciliation. I was scrolling through social media late one night when I saw a post from a mutual family friend back in Denver. It was a photo from Timothy's wedding, which I hadn't even known was happening. But the caption destroyed me. So beautiful to see the whole Walsh family together again. Praying Matilda gets the help she needs and can rejoin the family someday. I stared at that screen for an hour, processing what I was reading. Someone, and I knew it had to be, Cassandra had told our extended family and friends that I had a drug problem, that I was unstable and dangerous, that I'd fled Colorado to avoid prosecution for theft. The lies were spreading like cancer through every relationship I'd ever valued. My college roommates, my high school friends, my former co-workers, they all believed I was a criminal and an addict who'd abandoned my family in their time of need. That night, I deleted all my social media accounts and accepted that my old life was truly over. There would be no reconciliation, no clearing my name, no happy reunion where the truth came out and everyone apologized. Cassandra had poisoned every well, and she was too smart to leave evidence of her lies. From that point forward, I poured all my pain and anger into building something that would prove my worth even if my family never saw it. I was going to create a business so successful that everyone who doubted me would know they'd been wrong. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took 3 more years of 60-hour weeks of choosing between rent and groceries, of wearing the same 3 outfits to meetings because I couldn't afford professional clothes. But slowly, steadily, my little skincare company began to grow. By year 6 in Los Angeles, I was finally making enough money to rent my own studio apartment. It wasn't much, 400 square feet with a Murphy bed and a kitchen the size of a closet, but it was mine. I'd never felt more proud of any accomplishment in my life. That tiny apartment became my laboratory, my office, and my sanctuary. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning to blend new formulations before heading to the farmer's market, then spend evenings packaging orders and researching expansion opportunities. Every jar I filled, every label I applied, every customer I served was a small act of defiance against the people who'd written me off. I was building more than a business. I was building proof that I was exactly who I'd always claimed to be: honest, hardworking, and worthy of love. Even if my family never saw it, I was creating something beautiful from the ashes of their betrayal. The breakthrough that changed everything happened on a foggy Saturday morning at the Santa Monica Farmers Market during my 6th year in Los Angeles. I was arranging my usual display of handmade products when a woman with perfectly sculpted cheekbones and designer sunglasses approached my table. "Excuse me," she said, picking up one of my lavender face creams and examining the label carefully. "Did you make this yourself?" Her name was Diana Chen, and she was a celebrity makeup artist whose client list included A-list actresses and Grammy-winning musicians. She'd been searching for natural skincare products that wouldn't interfere with professional makeup applications, and most commercial brands contained ingredients that caused reactions under hot studio lights. Diana bought 3 jars that day and promised to try them with her clients. 2 weeks later, she returned and ordered 12 of everything I had in stock. "Your lavender cream is magic," she told me, her excitement genuine. "I used it on Amanda Sterling before her red carpet appearance last week, and her skin looked flawless under the cameras. She wants to know where she can buy more." Amanda Sterling was currently starring in the biggest romantic comedy of the year. When she posted an Instagram story about her miracle lavender cream from a local farmer's market, my phone started ringing nonstop. Within 48 hours, I'd received over 200 online orders from across the country. My tiny apartment kitchen couldn't handle that volume, and I was forced to find a commercial space immediately or lose the momentum. I found a small commercial kitchen in a shared facility in Culver City for $800 a month. It wasn't glamorous, fluorescent lighting, industrial stainless steel surfaces, and a constant smell of cleaning chemicals, but it was legal for product manufacturing and had enough space for me to scale up production. My first employee was Sarah Martinez, a single mother I met through a job placement program for women re-entering the workforce. She'd been unemployed for 8 months after leaving an abusive relationship, and most employers were hesitant to hire someone with gaps in their work history. Sarah turned out to be incredibly detail-oriented and genuinely cared about product quality. While I focused on developing new formulations and handling marketing, she managed production schedules and quality control. We worked 12-hour days side by side, packaging orders late into the night and sharing takeout dinners while planning the next day's production runs. The business grew organically through word of mouth and social media. Fashion magazines started featuring my products in beauty roundups, and lifestyle bloggers posted reviews that drove consistent website traffic. I reinvested every dollar of profit into better ingredients, professional packaging, and expanded product lines. But success brought new challenges I hadn't anticipated. During year 7, a competitor filed a lawsuit claiming I'd stolen their proprietary formula for anti-aging serum. The allegation was completely false. My recipe came directly from Grandma Rose's journal, but defending myself cost $15,000 in legal fees that nearly bankrupted the company. Around the same time, I had to issue a voluntary recall when a batch of products was contaminated during a power outage at the commercial kitchen. No one was seriously hurt, but the incident damaged my reputation and cost another $20,000 in lost inventory and customer refunds. There were nights I seriously considered giving up and finding a regular job with a steady paycheck. The stress was overwhelming, and I had no family support system to help me through the difficult times. But Sarah and my growing team of employees depended on their paychecks, and I refused to let them down the way my family had let me down. By year 8, we'd moved to a larger facility and employed 12 people. I'd expanded the product line to include anti-aging serums, acne treatments, seasonal collections, and men's skincare products. Annual revenue had reached 7 figures, and I was finally able to pay myself a living wage. The company culture I created was intentionally family-oriented, which felt ironic given my personal circumstances. I offered generous maternity leave, flexible schedules for parents, and profit-sharing bonuses for long-term employees. Sarah had been promoted to vice president, and several other team members had advanced to supervisory roles. We celebrated birthdays with homemade cake in the break room, organized potluck lunches, and closed the facility every year between Christmas and New Year's so everyone could spend time with their families. Creating that supportive environment for other people helped heal something broken inside me. During year 9, I opened my flagship store in Beverly Hills. The boutique was everything I'd dreamed of: exposed brick walls, vintage furniture, and custom shelving that displayed products like works of art. Natural light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the air smelled like lavender and eucalyptus from the essential oil diffusers. The grand opening event was covered by local media and attended by several celebrities who'd become regular customers. I wore a simple black dress and felt proud of how far I'd come from sleeping in my car and selling products from a card table. But even as I smiled for photographers and thanked customers for their support, part of me felt hollow. Success was sweeter when you had people you loved to share it with. I'd built an empire, but I was still fundamentally alone in the world. That emptiness became more pronounced during year 10, when Forbes featured me in their Self-Made Women Under 40 list. The article included a photo shoot and detailed profile about overcoming adversity to build a successful business. They asked about my family, and I gave vague answers about being focused on work and maintaining privacy. The recognition brought unexpected opportunities. My alma mater, Colorado State University, invited me to speak at their business school graduation and receive an Alumni Achievement Award. I politely declined, knowing that news of the event would likely reach my family in Denver. I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. I'd worked too hard to build my confidence and stability to risk having it destroyed by another encounter with the people who'd rejected me so completely. What I didn't know was that my privacy had been an illusion for years. During year 10, I hired a private investigator to conduct background checks on potential executive hires, and he discovered something disturbing in the process. Someone had been monitoring my business activities through social media industry publications and even customer reviews. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidental. Someone was deliberately tracking my success and gathering detailed information about my company's growth. When the investigator traced the digital footprints, they all led back to one person, Cassandra. She'd been watching me for years, documenting my achievements and even visiting my Beverly Hills store incognito to observe the business firsthand. The realization that my sister had been stalking my success while maintaining the lie that I was a dangerous criminal, filled me with a new kind of rage. She destroyed my family relationships, stolen years of my life, and now she was monitoring my recovery like a predator, waiting for the right moment to strike again. I knew that moment would come eventually. Successful people were visible targets, and Cassandra was too smart and too desperate to resist trying to exploit my achievements somehow. I just never imagined she'd be bold enough to show up at my door demanding a place to live. By year 11, my company had reached a valuation of $15 million after a major partnership with a national retail chain. The deal would put my products in over 3,000 stores across America, and the advance payment alone was enough to secure my financial future permanently. I celebrated by purchasing something I'd dreamed about since those early days, sleeping in my car, a home that no one could ever take away from me. The Beverly Hills mansion cost $4 million, which I paid in cash to avoid any possibility of foreclosure or financial vulnerability. The house was everything I'd fantasized about during those lean years. 6 bedrooms with walk-in closets larger than my first apartment, 4 bathrooms with marble countertops and rainfall showers, a gourmet kitchen with professional-grade appliances, and formal dining room that could seat 12 people comfortably. But the real luxury was the outdoor space, an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the Los Angeles skyline, a fully equipped outdoor kitchen for entertaining mature landscaping with Japanese maples and flowering jasmine, and a 3-car garage that now housed my Tesla, a vintage Mustang convertible, and a Range Rover for weekend adventures. The wine cellar held 600 bottles, though I rarely drank alone. The home theater had plush leather recliners and a sound system that rivaled commercial cinemas. The master suite included a sitting area with a fireplace and French doors opening to a private balcony overlooking the city. Walking through those rooms for the first time, I felt both triumphant and melancholy. This was the American dream realized through pure determination, but having no one to share it with highlighted the cost of my success. I furnished the mansion carefully, choosing pieces that felt both luxurious and welcoming. The guest quarters were particularly beautiful. I kept hoping that someday I might have family visitors who could appreciate the comfortable beds, private bathroom, and sitting area with views of the garden. Within 6 months of moving in, I'd begun hosting charity events in my home. The first fundraiser was for a women's shelter that helped abuse survivors transition to independent living. 50 guests donated over $30,000 while enjoying catered appetizers and tours of the house. Those events became regular occurrences, fundraisers for entrepreneurship programs, for underprivileged youth, scholarship funds for first-generation college students, and support groups for women starting their own businesses. Giving back felt like the best use of my success, and hosting events filled the mansion with laughter and purpose. My personal life during this period was more fulfilling than it had been since leaving Denver. I'd started dating James Rodriguez, an architect who designed sustainable commercial buildings. We met at a charity auction where he was donating his services to design a new community center. James was different from anyone I'd dated before. He wasn't intimidated by my success or suspicious of my motives. He appreciated my work ethic and shared my passion for environmental responsibility. Most importantly, he never pushed me to talk about my family situation, accepting my boundaries, without making me feel defensive. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally. Weekend trips to Napa Valley, cooking dinner together in my magnificent kitchen, attending cultural events and museum exhibitions. James had his own successful career and social circle, so our time together felt balanced and authentic. For the first time since leaving Colorado, I began to believe that real happiness might be possible. I had meaningful work, financial security, genuine friendships, and a romantic relationship with potential for long-term commitment. But underneath that contentment was persistent anxiety about my family situation. Success had made me more visible, and I worried constantly about unwanted contact or public exposure of my past. I'd installed a comprehensive security system in the mansion, complete with cameras, motion sensors, and a direct line to a private security company. That caution proved justified when I started receiving anonymous packages at my business address. The first contained newspaper clippings about my company's success with handwritten notes in the margins. Thought you'd want to see how far your lies have taken you. The handwriting was familiar, though I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. The second package included printed screenshots from my social media accounts and website, with certain phrases circled in red ink. The third contained photos that had clearly been taken from outside my Beverly Hills store, showing me through the windows during normal business hours. I took the packages to my private investigator, who confirmed my worst suspicions. The handwriting belonged to Cassandra, and the surveillance photos indicated that she'd been watching my movements for months. She's escalating, the investigator warned me. This pattern suggests someone who's building toward direct contact. You should consider increasing your security measures and documenting everything for potential legal action. I followed his advice, upgrading my home security system and instructing my staff to be alert for suspicious visitors at the store. But part of me was almost relieved that the waiting was nearly over. 13 years of looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next attack would come, had been exhausting. I'd rather face Cassandra directly than spend the rest of my life anticipating her next move. The final straw came during a particularly vulnerable time for my family back in Denver. Through careful online monitoring, I learned that Dad had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. Mom was struggling to manage his care while dealing with mounting medical bills that their insurance didn't fully cover. I wanted desperately to help them, but any contact would require acknowledging their rejection and risking further emotional damage. I was strong enough now to handle conflict with Cassandra, but I wasn't sure I could survive another rejection from my parents. Instead, I had my lawyer quietly establish an anonymous medical fund that could cover Dad's treatments if they applied for assistance. It wasn't the same as being there to support them personally, but it was something. What I didn't anticipate was how desperate that financial crisis would make Cassandra, or how boldly she'd act to try to exploit my success. The security footage from the week before she appeared at my door showed her conducting surveillance of my property, mapping my daily routines, and identifying potential vulnerabilities. She'd researched my staff schedules, my relationship with James, and even my charitable activities. Cassandra wasn't making a spontaneous, desperate plea for help. She was executing a carefully planned operation to gain access to my wealth, and she'd been preparing for months. When my doorbell rang that Sunday afternoon, I knew exactly who it was and why she'd come. What I didn't know was how ruthless she'd become in the years since destroying our family, or how far she'd go to get what she wanted. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly sales reports in my home office. Timothy's name appeared on my cell phone screen, and for a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. We hadn't spoken in 13 years, and unexpected contact from my family usually meant bad news. But something compelled me to answer, and I immediately heard the strain in my baby brother's voice. "Matilda," he said, and just hearing him speak my name after so many years brought tears to my eyes. "I know I have no right to call you, but I need you to know what's happening with Dad." The words tumbled out of him in a rush, like he was afraid I'd hang up before he could finish. Dad had advanced Alzheimer's disease diagnosed 2 years earlier, but progressing rapidly. He'd started wandering away from the house, forgetting basic safety measures and becoming agitated when he couldn't recognize familiar faces. Mom was exhausted from providing round-the-clock care while managing Dad's increasing medical needs. Their insurance covered only basic treatments and the specialized memory care facilities that could help him cost $8,000 per month, money they simply didn't have. "We lost the house last month," Timothy continued, his voice breaking. "The medical bills and the modifications Mom needed to make the place safe for Dad. It was too much. They're living in a small apartment now, and Mom is trying to care for him alone because we can't afford professional help." I listened in stunned silence as my brother described the financial devastation that had destroyed our parents' retirement security. Dad's condition required constant supervision, specialized equipment, and medications that weren't fully covered by Medicare. Mom had been forced to quit her job as a school nurse to become his full-time caregiver. "There's something else," Timothy said quietly. "Something I should have told you years ago, but I was too much of a coward." My heart stopped. I knew somehow that he was about to confirm what I'd suspected for over a decade. "I never believed you stole Grandma's ring," he whispered. "Even that night when we found it in your apartment, something felt wrong about the whole situation. Cassandra seemed too prepared, too ready with explanations and solutions. But I was scared to speak up against her, and when you left, I convinced myself it was easier to let things be." The admission hit me like a physical blow. My own brother had suspected the truth, but chosen family peace over justice, allowing me to be cast out rather than risk creating additional conflict. "I'm not calling to ask for your forgiveness," Timothy continued. "I know I failed you when you needed me most, but there are things you need to know about what's been happening since you left." Over the next hour, Timothy told me a story that made my stomach turn with rage and disgust. Cassandra's legal career had imploded 3 years earlier when she was caught embezzling client funds to cover gambling debts. She'd lost her law license, her apartment, and her savings in the resulting legal settlement. Since then, she'd been living with our parents, supposedly helping care for Dad while actually draining their remaining financial resources. She'd convinced them to give her access to their bank accounts for convenience, then use their credit cards to fund her ongoing gambling addiction. She told them she was applying for jobs and managing their finances, Timothy explained, but really she was spending their money at the casino and hiding the bills from them. By the time I figured out what was happening, they were already in serious debt. The most devastating revelation was that Cassandra had sold Grandma Rose's emerald ring years ago to pay off a particularly large gambling loss. The family heirloom that had caused my exile from the family was gone forever, converted into casino chips, and lost at poker tables. "Mom doesn't even know it's missing," Timothy said sadly. "She keeps the empty jewelry box in her dresser and sometimes forgets that Grandma is gone. During her confused moments, she asks me why Matilda never comes to visit anymore." Learning that our mother, now 73 years old and dealing with early signs of dementia herself, was asking for me, while struggling to care for Dad alone, was almost unbearable. I'd missed 13 years of their lives because of Cassandra's lies, and now they were suffering while I lived in luxury just 1,000 miles away. But Timothy wasn't finished with his revelations. The private investigator's report had been accurate. Cassandra had been systematically monitoring my business success for years. She'd created fake social media profiles to follow my company's activities, contacted former mutual friends to gather information about my achievements, and even applied for low-level jobs at companies that did business with mine. "She knows everything about your success," Timothy warned me. "Your company's valuation, your mansion in Beverly Hills, your charity work. She's been documenting it all, and I think she's planning to make some kind of move to get access to your money." The final piece of information explained the surveillance I'd been experiencing. Cassandra had recently convinced our parents to ask Timothy for my contact information, claiming she wanted to rebuild family relationships and apologize for the misunderstandings from years ago. "I didn't give her anything," Timothy assured me, "but she's been researching you online and probably hired someone to help her find your address. I think she's planning to show up uninvited and use Mom and Dad's medical crisis to manipulate you into giving her money." After we hung up, I sat in my home office for hours processing everything Timothy had told me. The sister I'd once admired was a pathological liar, a thief and a gambling addict who destroyed our parents' financial security while they were most vulnerable. But more than anger, I felt overwhelming guilt about not being there to protect them. If I'd swallowed my pride and accepted false responsibility for the ring theft, I could have been present to prevent Cassandra's financial abuse. My parents were suffering partly because I'd chosen integrity over family unity. That evening, I called my lawyer to discuss options for helping Mom and Dad without exposing myself to additional manipulation from Cassandra. We arranged for an anonymous contribution to a medical assistance fund that could cover Dad's specialized care, but I knew money alone wouldn't solve the deeper family crisis. I also increased my home security measures and briefed my household staff about potential unwanted visitors. James noticed my increased anxiety and gently asked if there was anything he could do to help, but I wasn't ready to fully explain my family's situation to him yet. 3 days after Timothy's call, my security cameras captured footage of a woman conducting surveillance of my property from a rental car parked across the street. She returned for 4 consecutive nights, each time staying for several hours and taking photographs of my house, my vehicles, and my daily routines. The investigator confirmed that the woman was Cassandra and that she'd been in Los Angeles for over a week, staying at a budget motel near the airport. She'd rented the car using a credit card that showed a pattern of recent desperate financial activity. Cash advances, balance transfers, and payments that were consistently late or missed entirely. She's planning something big, the investigator warned me. This level of preparation suggests she's not just looking for a handout. She's building towards some kind of major confrontation or manipulation attempt. I spent that weekend reviewing security footage, updating my emergency procedures, and mentally preparing for whatever Cassandra had planned. Part of me was almost relieved that the years of uncertainty were finally coming to an end. But I also felt a deep sadness about the family relationships that had been poisoned beyond repair. Cassandra's actions had cost all of us so much 13 years of love and support that could never be recovered. Our parents' golden years destroyed by financial stress and family division, and my own emotional growth stunted by unresolved trauma. When she finally appeared at my door that Sunday afternoon, I was ready for her. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing both practically and emotionally for this confrontation. My security system was recording everything my lawyer was on speed dial, and I'd finally found the strength to face the person who'd stolen so much from all of us. What I wasn't prepared for was how brazen and manipulative she'd become, or how far she'd go to try to exploit the family crisis she'd helped create. The doorbell rang at exactly 3:15 on Sunday afternoon, just as I was finishing lunch with James on the terrace overlooking my pool. The security monitor showed Cassandra standing at my front gate with 2 large suitcases, wearing a carefully calculated expression of humble desperation. "I need to handle this alone," I told James, who immediately offered to stay for support. "Are you sure? You seem really tense about whoever this is." "It's my sister," I said simply. "We haven't spoken in 13 years. James's expression shifted to concern, but he respected my boundaries. "Call me if you need anything," he said, kissing my forehead before gathering his things and leaving through the back entrance. I watched Cassandra through the security cameras for several minutes before activating the intercom system. She'd aged significantly since our last encounter, with gray streaks in her auburn hair and lines around her eyes that suggested years of stress and poor decisions. But her posture remained confident, almost entitled, as she waited for me to respond to her presence. "Hello, Cassandra," I said through the speaker system. "This is unexpected." Her performance began immediately. Her face crumpled into an expression of carefully rehearsed remorse, and she moved closer to the camera so I could see her tears clearly. "Matilda, thank you for speaking to me," she said, her voice shaking with what sounded like genuine emotion. "I know I don't deserve your kindness after everything that's happened between us." I opened the gate remotely but didn't unlock the front door. When she approached with her suitcases, I spoke to her through the video intercom system. "Why are you here?" I asked directly. "I've lost everything," she said, the tears flowing more freely now. "My career, my apartment, my savings. I've been living with Mom and Dad trying to help care for Dad, but I got evicted from my temporary housing yesterday. I have nowhere else to go." The lies came so smoothly that I could see why she'd been successful in manipulating our family for so many years. If I hadn't known the truth about her gambling addiction and financial abuse of our parents, I might have felt genuinely sorry for her. "There are hotels," I said, "shelters, social services that can help people in crisis." "Matilda, please," she said, pressing her palm against the glass door like a penitent seeking sanctuary. We're family. I know I made mistakes years ago, but that was ancient history. Right now, I just need a place to stay temporarily while I get back on my feet. I activated the recording app on my phone before unlocking the door. Whatever happened next, I wanted documentation of our conversation. When Cassandra stepped into my marble foyer, her reaction was carefully controlled, but I could see her calculating the value of everything she observed. Her eyes lingered on the crystal chandelier, the original artwork, the imported Italian tiles beneath her feet. "Wow," she said softly, "you've done incredibly well for yourself." "Yes, I have," I replied, not offering the tour she was clearly hoping for. We stood facing each other in the entryway, and I was struck by how much she resembled our mother around the eyes. For a moment, I felt a flash of the love I'd once had for my big sister, the one who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with math homework. But then she spoke again and the manipulation resumed. "I've been following your success in the business magazines," she said with what appeared to be genuine pride. "Grandmother Rose would be so proud of how you've used her recipes to build something beautiful." The reference to Grandma Rose was a calculated emotional strike, and I felt my jaw clench with anger. "Would she," I asked, "or would she be heartbroken that her emerald ring was sold to pay gambling debts?" Cassandra's mask slipped for just a second, revealing panic before she recovered her composure. "I don't know what Timothy told you, but you can't believe everything you hear. He's been under a lot of stress with Dad's condition, and sometimes—" "Stop," I said firmly. "I know about the gambling, I know about the embezzlement. I know you've been stealing from Mom and Dad while they're caring for a man with Alzheimer's disease. I know you sold Grandma's ring years ago." Her performance of confused innocence was so practiced that it was almost convincing. "Matilda, those are serious accusations. I understand you're angry about what happened all those years ago, but making up stories about—" "I also know you've been stalking my business for years," I continued. "Taking photos of my store, researching my company's finances, creating fake social media profiles to monitor my activities." That accusation hit its mark. Cassandra's face flushed with anger, and her voice took on the sharp edge I remembered from our childhood arguments. "Stalking. I've been proud of my little sister's success and wanted to know how you were doing. Is it a crime to care about family?" "Caring about family," I repeated slowly. "Is that what you call destroying our parents' retirement savings while they're trying to cope with Dad's dementia?" Cassandra moved closer to me, her desperation becoming more apparent as her manipulation tactics failed to work. "Look at this place," she said, gesturing around the mansion. "You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Our parents are struggling to afford Dad's medical care, and you're living like royalty while they suffer." "Our parents are struggling because you stole their savings," I replied. "Not because I've been successful." "They need help right now," she pressed. "Whatever problems you think I have, Mom and Dad are innocent. They're old, they're scared, and they need financial support that only you can provide." She was right about our parents needing help, and she knew that guilt was my vulnerable spot. But I'd already arranged for anonymous assistance through the medical fund, so her emotional blackmail wouldn't work. "I'll help Mom and Dad," I said, "but not through you." Cassandra's face darkened with rage that she could no longer hide. "You owe this family," she said, her voice rising. "After everything we went through because of what you did, you owe us." "What I did?" I asked incredulously. "Yes, what you did," she shouted. "Stealing from grandmother's estate, abandoning the family when we needed you, most building your little business empire while Dad was getting sick and Mom was struggling to hold everything together." I'd activated the recording app just in time. Cassandra was so angry now that she was repeating the lies she'd constructed years earlier, apparently forgetting that I knew the truth. "I didn't steal anything," I said quietly. "Bullshit," she screamed. "We all saw where we found that ring, hidden in your bedroom like stolen goods. You destroyed our family's trust and then ran away rather than take responsibility. You planted that ring." I said, stepping closer to her. You stole it from Grandma's collection, hid it in my apartment, and then orchestrated that whole scene to make me look guilty. That's insane, she said, but I could see panic creeping into her expression again. You needed me gone, I continued. Maybe because Grandma loved me more than you, or maybe because you were already planning to steal from Mom and Dad and knew I'd figure it out eventually. You're delusional, she said, but her voice was shaking now. Am I then explain why you sold that ring to cover gambling debts 3 years later? Cassandra stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working furiously to find a new angle of attack. Fine, she said finally. Maybe I made some mistakes back then. Maybe I was jealous of how much attention Grandmother gave you, and maybe I acted out in ways I shouldn't have. But that was 13 years ago, Matilda. People change. I've learned from my mistakes. It was the closest thing to an admission I was likely to get, but it was too little and far too late. Have you? I asked. Because you're here right now trying to manipulate me into giving you money by exploiting our parents' medical crisis. I'm here because I'm desperate, she said, the tears returning. I've lost everything because of my gambling problem. I'm trying to get clean, but I need help to start over. Then go to Gamblers Anonymous. Check yourself into a treatment program. Get professional help for your addiction. I need housing while I do those things, she said. Just temporary housing in your guest quarters. You have the space and you have the money. What's a few months of helping family when you can clearly afford it? I looked at my sister, this woman who destroyed so many lives with her lies and manipulation, and felt a mixture of pity and revulsion. No, I said simply. No, she repeated, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I'll pay for a hotel room for 1 week, and I'll give you contact information for social services that can help with job placement and addiction treatment. But you're not staying in my home. Cassandra's face transformed into an expression of pure hatred that reminded me why I'd been afraid of this confrontation for so many years. You selfish bitch, she snarled. You have everything and you won't spare the smallest amount to help your own family. My own family, I repeated sadly. The same family that threw me out of their lives based on your lies. Those weren't lies, she screamed. Everything I told them about you was true. You're selfish, you're vindictive, and you've always thought you were better than the rest of us. If that were true, I said calmly, why have you been stalking my success for years? Why do you know my company's revenue and the value of this house? Cassandra realized she'd revealed too much and tried to backtrack, but it was too late. I haven't been stalking anything. I just keep up with family news. Family news. I pulled out my phone and showed her photos the private investigator had taken of her conducting surveillance on my property. Is this keeping up with family news? The sight of photographic evidence of her stalking behavior seemed to break something inside her. The performance of desperation and remorse disappeared, completely replaced by cold calculation. Fine, she said. You want to know the truth? I've been watching you because I knew this day would come. I knew that eventually our parents would need expensive medical care, and I knew you'd have the money to help them. By stealing their savings first, I was investing their money, she said with no shame whatsoever. The casino was supposed to be temporary income while I looked for work. It wasn't supposed to become a problem. The casual way she described gambling away our parents' life savings as an investment strategy was breathtaking in its narcissism. And when that didn't work out, you decided to come here and manipulate me into supporting all of you. I decided to give you the chance to do the right thing, she corrected, to help your family when they need you most. The right thing, I repeated slowly, like confessing to a crime I didn't commit would have been the right thing 13 years ago. Cassandra's expression shifted again, and I saw calculation in her eyes that made my skin crawl. You know what? She said, her voice taking on a threatening tone. Maybe I should contact some of those business magazines that love writing about your success story. I'm sure they'd be interested in the truth about your family relationships and how you abandoned sick parents to live in luxury. It was extortion plain and simple, and exactly what the private investigator had warned me to expect. Are you threatening me? I asked, my own anger finally rising. I'm giving you a choice, she said with a smile that reminded me of a snake. Help your family like a decent person would, or deal with the consequences of public exposure. Public exposure of what exactly? That my sister framed me for theft, and I've been supporting myself independently ever since. Public exposure of how you've ignored your sick father and elderly mother while building your cosmetics empire, she said. How you've had the money to help them for years but chose to let them suffer instead. I haven't been letting them suffer. I've been giving them anonymous medical assistance for months. Cassandra's eyes widened with surprise and something that looked like respect. Smart, she said, but anonymous charity isn't the same as being present for your family. People will still see you as someone who chose money over family loyalty. And what do you think people will see when I release this recording of you admitting to planting evidence and extorting me? For the first time since she'd arrived, Cassandra looked genuinely afraid. You've been recording this conversation. Every word wad, I confirmed, including your confession about framing me for theft and your threats to damage my reputation unless I give you money. Cassandra stared at me in silence for several seconds, and I could see her mind working frantically to find a way out of the trap she'd created for herself. Delete that recording, she said finally. No. Delete it, or I'll tell everyone that you're an addict who's been hiding behind fake success while your family suffered. Go ahead, I said calmly. I have documentation of my business growth tax records showing legitimate income and witness testimony from dozens of employees and business partners. What evidence do you have to support your claims about drug addiction? Cassandra realized that her bluff had been called and her threats had no teeth. For the first time in our entire relationship, I held all the power, and she had no way to manipulate the situation. You can't do this to me, she said, desperation creeping back into her voice. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister 13 years ago when you chose lies over love, I replied. Now you're just a woman who tried to extort money from me and threatened my reputation when I refused. I walked to the front door and opened it, gesturing for her to leave. Take your suitcases and go. I'll transfer money for 1 week in a decent hotel to your account, along with contact information for social services that can help with job placement and addiction treatment. This isn't over, Cassandra said as she dragged her suitcases toward the door. Yes, it is, I replied. And if you contact me again, attempt to come to my house, or follow through on your threats to damage my reputation, I'll release this recording to the police and press charges for extortion and harassment. After she left, I locked the door and activated the security system, then called my lawyer to discuss next steps. The recording was clear evidence of attempted extortion, and I wanted to establish a paper trail in case Cassandra escalated her threats. But more than legal protection, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 13 years, complete vindication. Cassandra had confessed to framing me, admitted to stealing from our parents, and revealed the extent of her manipulation and lies. The truth was finally documented and undeniable. After more than a decade of carrying the burden of false accusations, I was free. Within 24 hours of Cassandra's visit, I took action on multiple fronts to protect myself and help my family in the ways that actually mattered. First, I met with my lawyer to file formal charges against Cassandra for attempted extortion, based on the clear recording of her threats to damage my reputation unless I gave her money. We also obtained a restraining order that prohibited her from coming within 500 feet of my home business or any property I owned. The recording was devastating evidence. Cassandra's admission that she'd planted Grandma Rose's ring in my apartment, combined with her threats to expose me unless I paid her, constituted multiple felonies under California law. My lawyer assured me that the case was airtight and that Cassandra would likely face serious jail time if convicted. But legal justice was only part of the healing I needed. The more important step was reaching out to the family members who'd been deceived by her lies for 13 years. I called Timothy first and played him the recording of Cassandra's confession. My brother wept openly as he heard our sister admit to framing me and threatening extortion. "I'm so sorry," he said over and over. "I should have trusted you. I should have spoken up when I suspected something was wrong." "You were young and scared," I told him gently. "Cassandra was convincing, and she'd been manipulating all of us for longer than we realized." Timothy arranged a family meeting that weekend at his home in Colorado Springs, inviting our extended family members who'd been told various versions of Cassandra's lies about my supposed crimes and addiction. I flew to Colorado for the first time in 13 years, bringing copies of the recording and documentation of my business success. Walking into that living room full of aunts, uncles, and cousins who'd believed I was a criminal and drug addict was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. But their reactions when they heard Cassandra's recorded confession were everything I'd hoped for. Aunt Patricia, who'd helped raise me after my parents divorced briefly when I was 12, broke down in tears and apologized for not reaching out during the years I was estranged. Uncle Michael, Dad's brother, who'd always been my favorite relative, stood up and hugged me for 5 full minutes without saying a word. "We failed you," Uncle Michael said finally. "We should have asked more questions, demanded better proof, trusted what we knew about your character." Cousin Jennifer, who'd been my best friend growing up, admitted that she'd always felt something was wrong about the situation, but had been too scared of family drama to investigate further. "Cassandra was so convincing," she said sadly. "She had answers for everything, explanations that made sense if you didn't look too closely." The family meeting lasted 6 hours with various relatives sharing their memories of suspicious behavior from Cassandra over the years that now made sense in light of her confession. Uncle Michael revealed that money had gone missing from family gatherings she'd attended. Aunt Patricia mentioned expensive purchases Cassandra had made during periods when she claimed to be unemployed. Most importantly, everyone wanted to know about my parents and how we could help them during Dad's declining health. I'd already taken action on that front. Using my business connections, I'd arranged for Mom and Dad to move into Sunrise Manor, the most prestigious assisted living facility in the Denver area. The facility specialized in Alzheimer's care and had a memory unit where Dad could receive professional supervision 24 hours a day. Mom would have her own apartment in the independent living section with access to meal plans, housekeeping, social activities, and medical support as needed. Most importantly, she'd be able to visit Dad whenever she wanted, without the exhausting responsibility of providing all his care herself. I'd also established a family trust fund managed by Timothy that would cover all of their living expenses, medical treatments, and any additional care they might need as their conditions progressed. The trust was funded with $2 million, enough to ensure they'd never worry about money again. The reunion with my parents was emotional in ways I hadn't anticipated. Dad's Alzheimer's had progressed significantly, and he didn't recognize me at first. But when I mentioned making lavender cookies with Grandma Rose, something clicked in his memory and he smiled. "Matilda," he said softly, "my stubborn little baker." Mom was physically frailer than I'd expected, but mentally sharp enough to understand everything that had happened. When I played her the recording of Cassandra's confession, she listened in silence with tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered when the recording ended. "We should have believed you. You were always the honest one, even when the truth was difficult." "I understand why you believed her," I said, holding Mom's hand. "She was very convincing and families want to trust each other." "But we threw you away," Mom said, the guilt evident in her voice. "Our own daughter, and we threw you away for 13 years. "I'm here now," I told her. "That's what matters." Dad had moments of clarity during that visit when he seemed to understand what was happening. During one of those moments, he looked at me with the father I remembered from childhood. "I'm proud of you," he said clearly. "Building something beautiful from scratch. That takes real strength." Those words meant more to me than any business award or magazine feature ever could. The legal proceedings against Cassandra moved quickly. She was arrested 3 days after our confrontation and charged with extortion, elder financial abuse, and fraud related to her embezzlement of our parents' savings. The evidence was overwhelming. The recorded confession financial records showing her gambling losses and documentation of money she'd stolen from mom and dad's accounts. Her public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney's office was determined to prosecute fully due to the elder abuse charges. Taking advantage of elderly parents with dementia was considered particularly heinous, and the prosecutor wanted to send a message that such crimes wouldn't be tolerated. During the trial, I testified about Cassandra's confession and the years of stalking behavior that preceded her extortion attempt. Timothy testified about discovering the financial abuse of our parents. Several casino employees testified about Cassandra's gambling addiction and the large sums of money she'd lost over several years. The most damaging testimony came from financial experts who traced exactly how Cassandra had stolen our parents' retirement savings. She'd used their credit cards for cash advances that went directly to gambling losses, forged their signatures on loan applications, and even liquidated Dad's pension account without their knowledge. When the verdict came back guilty on all charges, Cassandra was sentenced to 8 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5. The judge specifically noted that her exploitation of vulnerable elderly parents during a medical crisis was particularly cruel and calculating. Justice was finally served, but the real healing happened in the months that followed. I relocated my business headquarters to Denver, maintaining the Beverly Hills store, but moving my primary operations closer to family. Sarah, my longtime employee, was excited about the move and helped establish our new facility in a beautiful converted warehouse downtown. James and I got engaged 6 months after the trial, and he designed a stunning sustainable home for us in the foothills outside Denver. The house had guest quarters where family members could visit, a large kitchen for hosting Sunday dinners, and a garden where I could grow herbs for both my personal use and business. Most importantly, I was able to spend quality time with Dad during his remaining good days. We worked together in the garden at Sunrise Manor, where he taught me things about soil and plant care that I incorporated into my business. Even when his memory failed, he seemed happiest with his hands in the dirt, nurturing growing things. Mom regained much of her vitality once the financial stress and caregiving burden were lifted. She became active in the social programs at Sunrise Manor and even started volunteering to help other families navigate the challenges of caring for relatives with dementia. Timothy and I rebuilt our relationship slowly but genuinely. He'd married a wonderful woman named Lisa, and their 2 children became my beloved nephew and niece. Sunday dinners at my new home became a family tradition, with Timothy's family, whatever relatives were available, and often James's family as well. The empty place setting that had once represented Cassandra was simply removed from the table. We didn't discuss her absence or maintain space for her potential return. She'd made her choices, and we'd moved forward as a family built on honesty and mutual support. My business continued to thrive, but now it had deeper meaning because I could share the success with people I loved. I established a scholarship program for first-generation college students in Dad's name, and a support fund for families dealing with Alzheimer's disease in Mom's honor. Grandma Rose's handwritten journal, which had started my skincare business, was now displayed prominently in my Denver home office. Looking at her careful cursive writing reminded me daily that family legacy wasn't about blood relations or geographical proximity. It was about carrying forward the values and love that define us as human beings. The most profound lesson I learned from those 13 years of separation and eventual reunion was that protecting yourself from toxic people, even relatives, is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. By refusing to enable Cassandra's destructive behavior and maintaining my integrity even when it cost me everything I held dear, I'd preserved the possibility of genuine healing when the truth finally emerged. Family isn't just about blood or shared history, It's about truth, loyalty, and choosing to lift each other up even when times are difficult. Sometimes that means walking away from people who refuse to respect those values, and sometimes it means welcoming back people who've learned from their mistakes. The empty bedroom in my new home that I'd originally planned as guest space for visiting family now serves a different purpose. It's my meditation room where I start each morning with gratitude for the family I've rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and the business I've created from authenticity and hard work. Love wins, but only when it's based on truth. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? How do you handle relationships with people who consistently choose manipulation over honesty? What's the most important lesson you've learned about forgiveness and setting boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and find so much wisdom in your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up to help others find it. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that choosing truth over convenience is always worth it in the end. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your integrity is the one thing no one can ever take away from you, no matter how hard they try.